Good evening. This is Doug, W9LCQ. I'm the Secretary of Texas TDXS Society. Thanks for coming to our December meeting over Zoom. I got one item of business before we get into the program. We welcome the newest member to TDXS. His name is Tim Temple or Tim Hagar. Tim Hagar, WT4DX, Whiskey Tango 4DX. And he lives in the Woodlands. Okay, let me start the screen share here. We'll get into the program. I find this program. Where'd it go? Got too many things up.
I got a message on my PC today. They are forcing me to either upgrade to Windows 11 for free or decline the upgrade and lose it. So I figured, oh, what the heck, I'll do the upgrade.
Yeah, they tell me my PC is not up to the Windows 11 standards. They don't support my processor. Y'all see that on the screen?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. It's about time. This program is about building a highly accurate time server with a Raspberry Pi and a little bitty GPS receiver. And it came out of some discussions that Kim Carr and I had, she started about a month or two ago, I guess, maybe 2 months ago, Kim.
Yep.
And he was putting together a GPS time server for a specific problem he had out of his ranch. I heard about it and thought, well, it sounds like a fun project. So I obtained the same hardware that he was using. A lot of conversations back and forth and trying to get me up to speed and get my time server working too. And we're to the point now that we decided that maybe we'd just go ahead and write a article together for the bullsheet to chronicle our experiences. So this is a sort of an overview of that article, which is still in progress. So why do we care about time? You know, there's the time, like we used to say, what time is it? It's about 7:15. And then you had digital watches come around and smartphones, and now it's 7:14 and ahead, 0.32, something like that. So your computer probably runs on some sort of a time synchronization program, time.windows.com or time.nist.gov or something like that. Time is. And then there's aggregators like Dimension4 or Mindberg that pool lots and lots and lots of public servers and come up with the best ones to serve to you. But how accurate is good enough? Well, most of us know about FT8, and FT8, according to the specs, needs to be within one digit, plus or minus 1 second. But I think I've seen people make contacts with 2 seconds or more from time to time. So it's pretty forgiving. There's also things that get in the way, though, like network latency, retrieving time from the server, because you got to figure that we have a top level server, if you will, which is a satellite or something like that. So they call it Stratum 0, which is like a nanosecond kind of accuracy. The next level down server, which is working off of that satellite, is more of a microsecond level accuracy. By the time it gets to your PC, it's probably milliseconds or less accurate. So because of all the latencies involved, translations and things. So then again, what if there's no internet connection at all? I think that was Kim's problem, right, Kim?
Yeah, my internet at the ranch was up and down and not reliable. So I'd go in and do the usual, scan the bottom 30 kilohertz of the band for a signal and no CW. So I go to isn't very reliable. I won't say reliable, isn't very accurate. Mine will drift seconds in a week. So I had to, that's why I originally decided to build the time server, was to give myself an accurate clock that wasn't dependent on the internet.
It's interesting. I'm using right now, I'm using the Dimension 4 software to synchronize with, and they've got a history file or a history graphic that you could see the corrections. It looks like a sawtooth, and it's always in one direction. So it's surprisingly poor accuracy in these clocks in these PCs.
I haven't looked in mine to see because it just wasn't that interesting, but it seems like in my previous PCs, there was a really rough crystal that ran at 32,768 or ceramic resonator or something. And that's easily divided by 2 down to 1 pulse per second. But if that thing drifts very much, well, your clock drifts.
Yeah, and it depends on how hot your shack is. So how much drift you're going to have.
I wouldn't be surprised if RFI got it.
Well, yeah, that's true. So let's say we want to build our little local time server. What do we need? Well, we need a GPS receiver that gives us both the NMEA, we'll talk about that, what that is in a little bit, and pulse per second output. An active antenna to boost the very faint signal, and a host computer like a Raspberry Pi that's on your local network. This is recommendations that Kim came up with. Raspberry Pi version 3 or later with a good power supply and a SIM card for the operating system. And the 3, basically the version 3, so you got Wi-Fi. Then a GPS receiver module with 1 pulse per second output, along with the standard NMEA output. And what we've standardized on is this U-Blocks NEO8M GPS, which is a little thing about the size of a commemorative postage stamp. And it costs about $12. And then an active external antenna, another maybe $9 thrown in. And that antenna, so I'll show you what mine looks like. If you can see it in your side window. Oh, where is it? Come on, come on, come on. There we go. It's just about an inch by an inch and a half, something like that. And I have it sitting here in my windowsill on the first floor of a 1-story house. So the amplifier and the active antenna is really needed. And then there's some miscellaneous stuff like a USB to micro USB cable, because we're using the cable to get the NMEA data from the GPS unit into the Raspberry Pi. And then a single jumper to go from the GPS or PPS pin on the GPS unit into the Raspberry Pi. And I'll show you that in the next picture.
And one of the side advantages of using that USB cable is it powers the GPS receiver through the cable. You don't have to have a separate power supply for the GPS receiver.
Yep. Now there are some other variations out there. I was looking for different articles to just try to get some guidance on things I didn't quite understand. And there are some cases where people have used using a Adafruit or Adafruit hat on top of a Raspberry Pi to feed all 5 pins in from the this GPS unit. But this is probably the simplest way to most direct way to get it hooked in. You've got this is the GPS unit here in the upper right-hand corner. And like I say, it's about the size of a commemorative postage stamp. This black cord here is the antenna input coming in. Below that is the micro USB cable. It goes over into the Raspberry Pi. And you've got this single pin that goes from the pin 1 or the PPS pin on the GPS unit over to pin 12 on the GPIO port for the Raspberry Pi. And I have nothing else connected because I'm using Wi-Fi and using the SSH remote application, remote control. It looks to me like Kim is using HDMI. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got a PC connected to it as well, just to go in and play. But I can sometimes pull up, instead of using secure shell, I'll just pull it up on the PC, which is on a separate bench with this thing.
Oh, okay.
But it works as you have yours connected. It works just fine without the HDMI.
It's a lot more fun to try to remember all those arcane Linux commands.
Yeah, it is not for the faint of heart. If you're used to only Windows, it'll be an uphill climb for a while.
You know, I've been fooling with Linux since the 80s, I think, maybe the 90s, whatever it was. But I was just long enough to get on there, fool with it a little bit, learn a little bit, and then decide I didn't want to do anything with it, and forget it all. And then come back 5 or 6 years later, do the same thing all over again. But it's sort of fun to work with. It's nice that you can spawn multiple using PuTTY. You can spawn multiple windows, so you can see various different processes at the same time operating. That's the beauty of Linux. So the software side of getting this thing up and running was, of course, you always download the latest Linux OS image and then I'll update it and upgrade it. It's like I say, I enabled the SSH. You get this PPS tools module, which just adds the pulse per second support for the kernel. You install and configure the GPSD program, which decodes the data coming from the GPS unit. You configure NTPD, which is the network time protocol daemon, by pointing it towards the desired time servers that you're going to use. And then you point your shack computer at that NTP server address, or in other words, your Raspberry Pi address on your local network, and you're up and running, hopefully. Anything you want to add there, Kim?
Yeah, one thing came to mind was in that NTPD configuration, it's actually working with the NMEA sentences, which are the kind of text representation of the data coming off the GPS satellite. And you can run an NTP server without the pulse per second support in the kernel and without the pulse per second connection that we have, but it's not as accurate.
Yeah, in fact, there's some of the, I've got some references at the end of this talk. And a couple of those, that's where they strictly go to the NMEA output level.
I first did mine that way, and I mean, how much accuracy do you need? But of course, when I find out there's a way to do it more accurate, I want to tinker with that.
Exactly. That was my motivation. I've got some graphics here in a bit. And here's the output from the GPS, GPS NMEA data. They call them sentences. There's all kinds of, you see these preambles on the left-hand side. It's the name of the sentence. And these sentences could be for things like latitude, longitude, speed, altitude. The pulse per second is down here is a pulse per second offset from the satellite to the unit. A whole bunch of different information that we're not interested in, but maybe we're for navigation for your Cessna 182 or whatever it is.
Yeah, the maritime industry. Sorry, I was going to say the maritime industry is the one that actually started the NMEA sentence definition and all the stuff it rolled out, because they were moving away from LORAN, which was an old land-based radio system that was not very precise. And now with the GPS protocols and the receiver accuracy, now we're getting accuracies to within 2-3 feet, which is pretty dang precise. I know initially there was the military induced an error into GPS satellites for the general public to use. That you could be within 100 yards, but after a while they turned that off. So now it's pretty precise.
It's sort of scary when you go onto Google Earth and you see it looking right at your house, pointed right where the room is that you're in. Other things you can look at here on the left-hand side is the list of 12 satellites. And then how many of those are being used in the solution. In this case, at this particular moment in time, it's 9 out of those 12 are being used. But they change from second to second sometimes.
Yeah, the signal to noise ratio affects whether the satellite's going to be used. And you can see in Doug's data here under the S/N column, there's some pretty high signal to noise ratio of reception on these satellites, so they're providing good data.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, here, this this is time offset. This is saying that it's 384 milliseconds difference between the satellite and the local host machine. So that's 0.38 seconds. You get down to the pulse per second accuracy, you're down into the what's that? 60 nanoseconds.
Yeah, 64 nano. That's pretty dang tight.
Pretty damn tight, yeah. Okay, when you get your NTPD server up and running, there's a program that you can use to monitor called NTPQ, that you monitor the relative accuracy. And these you see on here, this shows things like the PPS 0. This is the actual pulse coming from the satellite. This SHM is a shared memory. This is where the pulse data that you use actually for your time determination, that comes from shared memory. And below here is just an example of some of the other public domain time servers out there, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and they could be 1, 2, 3, 4 hops away. Like this stratum 0 means that's like the atomic clock or the satellite data coming down. That's the highest level. 1 or 2 is below that. The farther down you get, the more, in a sense, the more hops away you are from the actual data. And you can see here on the right hand side, the time with the data that we're using is, now this is milliseconds. So this is 0.006 milliseconds. In other words, 6 microseconds. Whereas some of these others are 2.7 milliseconds. So they get higher than that, 3.8 milliseconds. So there's order of magnitude or several orders of magnitude difference between the data that's the time that's determined by the pulse per second data and the stuff that comes from the GPS data. Any other comments, Kim?
Yeah, the pulse per second data is not itself a direct indication of time. It's just a precision timing mark that allows software to then go in and correct what it's getting off the NMEA sentences back to the accuracy of PPS.
Yeah, so you have to have both together. The GPS data gets you in the ballpark, and then the PPS gives you that time, that precise time.
I think this is my green screen, isn't it, Doug?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yours looks better than mine.
It's not as fuzzy as it looks when I get my glasses at the right angle. And at mine wanders a little bit, but the offset stays anywhere between this 002, 006 down to 0. And I've noticed here lately, my jitter is down at kind of 2 microseconds and stays there.
Yes, usually takes quite a while to get down to this level of stability. It doesn't just take a few seconds or a few minutes. It takes hours or days to get down to this kind of of level of stability coming from the satellite. Just as it fine tunes your computer, your local computer. Now, this is what sort of a head scratcher in a sense is with the WSJT, the FT8 data, for example. So you got your plus or minus 2 microsecond satellite data GPS time. But then when it gets to the point of your PC running FT8, it's showing a delta time of 0.4, 0.5, 0.8, -1, positive 1.9. What's going on? Kim?
I don't know. We've kind of scratched our heads together over this one.
What I think is happening is there's a combination of your own machine not being quite accurate enough yet, not quite centered, but also a bias that most of the people out there are using calibrations that are not as precise, or they're doing it less often. They just let their computer do the calibration once a week and something like that.
Yeah, the Windows time service that when you first boot up will go out and synchronize with the specified time server. You can look that up in your time setup. That routine only recalibrates every 7 days. So it does it when you boot up, and if you shut down and then boot up again, it's going to do it again. But if you leave your machine on, it's not going to, recalibrate your time for 7 days.
If you lose a second a day, you're way off by that 7th day.
Yeah.
People don't realize how inaccurate a PC clock is.
Right, you are.
Now there's another thing here. If you look at the setup of FT8, FT8 has a little checkbox about call first. And if you're calling CQ and you've got that call first checkbox checked, the first signal that comes into your receiver is the one that you get hooked up to. So there's an advantage to being early. And sometimes I wonder if people are jiggering their time a little bit to be early rather than late. By the way, when it says negative, it means I'm 1.1 seconds behind that guy. The 1.9 is a positive. I'm 1.9 seconds ahead of that guy. That's when I start my packet.
Doug's having this problem, but I don't have near the magnitude of problem he does. My DT numbers are either at 0.0 or 0.1 for 80% of the stations that I see on my screen.
The DT numbers that are show, that's the other station compared to you. Their clock's off, not yours.
Yeah.
Well, they're off on a relative basis. I mean, so if Kim shows 0 and I show 0.7 for the same station, one of us is wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm still thinking that there may be some problem in my configuration. I'm still pondering that.
Is there a possibility that in this case, the 1.9, his relative signal strength is a -24, which is, he's right at the borderline. Is there a possibility that might be affecting it?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. All I ought to do is graph the dB versus the delta time, just to see if there's any kind of.
But then you look up here and you've got one at -19, -17 that are much lower.
Yeah.
The one right above it.
Yeah, -22.6. Yeah. And somewhere I was reading literature about the Wi-Fi interface in Windows, that how it reacts with the time in the PC. And then I've looked over it a dozen times since then and I can't find it, but I thought there might have been something in there we could use.
That's the maddening thing. I've looked at a lot of articles and I can't put my finger on any of them now because they're all mishmashed together. And one of the things that is sort of frustrating is you have articles that are written over a period of time with different OS builds for Raspberry Pi OSs with different constraints and so forth. some of these papers will spend a page or two on how to solve a problem that's no longer a problem.
Yeah, the new release of the software that's out there when you do your updates has it all fixed.
Right. And there's a lot of parameters, a lot of on this, I'm not going to worry about trying to pull it up, but that NTP D, when you're going into configuring that, there's some sort of fake addresses that are assigned to the, what am I trying to say here? The pulse per second and the shared memory.
Yeah, I thought that was real interesting when I learned about that, because I'm looking and it's talking to an IP address that, according to the IP standard, is not going to be distributed over the internet. It's only local, and that's how they know what kind of data it's looking at, is by the IP address that they.
Yeah, 127.127.28.0 or something like that.
It's not even a loopback address; it's just an address.
Yeah, it makes you scratch your head, but anyway, I'm having fun. Been having fun. Just for grins, these are the sources I looked up on Amazon for the GPS unit that we both have, and also for the external antenna that we both have. And then I
The only way I can think of that you guys are showing different time using the same hardware is your NTP comp files are different.
yeah, and that very well could be. I need to get Kim's NTPD file so I can go over.
Because you should
Line by
really
line.
only have it all set up to reference your local host stuff and none of the other pools or anything else.
No, they actually recommend that you assign a pool in that configuration file, kind of as a fallback position, I guess, because it requires, what is it? Is it 3 or 4 satellites have to be locked before you can actually use it for time reference?
Something like 4, I think. Yeah.
And if it ever falls out of that,
the NTP comp file doesn't know how many satellites are out there. Doesn't care. It just points to a server.
that is true.
So
But
you
if you,
just need to make sure that in your NTP comp file that you have your comp file set up so it's pointing to you as the primary server.
yeah, I don't know if we can get back to that screen that shows the NTPQ, but
Well, that's NTPQ. That's not showing the comp file. That's different.
this, you see this on the top line of PPS, there's an O
Right.
next to it, and there's an asterisk next to SHM. The software determines which one it's going to use as the most accurate, and the one with the asterisk next to it is the most accurate. The 0 is one that is within the tolerance ranges, but not quite as good, so it's the fallback position.
Okay, like I said, I'd have to see the npd.comp file to see what's going on.
Yeah, this is not, those two are not specified in the file. They're configured. Of course, you have to configure the PPS and point to its shared memory location and so on. Yeah, Doug, I can send you mine, no problem.
Yeah, I'd just like to get on the same page.
Didn't mean to interrupt. Go on.
Actually, I'm signing in so I could, let's see, I want to do, no, not that one. No, I'm trying to get into the NTPD file and so we could look at it.
While you're doing that, another thing I learned on this screen, if you look at the poll column, these servers only allow you to poll them every 64 seconds.
Yeah,
The information comes from the server. They don't want you to be hammered on it once a second or once every 2 seconds to just overload the server. Now, on my local ones, I can set them local to whatever I want. So I've got one of them doing every 16 seconds, and then the shared memory location, that the second one is every 8 seconds.
yeah, if you do the pull min, pull max, pull min 4, pull max 4 gives you 16 seconds.
Yeah, I confirmed if you try to poll, I got away with it on one of the servers, and on another one I changed it, and the server went offline.
Yeah.
You know, they don't like you banging up on their NTP boxes.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I've got. Any other comments?
I've got a question. In my case, where I'm operating remote, I've got a certain amount of latency between here and Nevada. What is this going to do to that latency? Or what is the latency going to do with the actual transmitted signal?
Well, there is a, what do they call it? Time one parameter where you can put in a fudge factor for that latency. You can't get rid of it, but you can minimize it.
If you measure and it's consistently 40 milliseconds or so, you can fudge it by 40 milliseconds to fool it into being 40 milliseconds sooner.
Okay. Yeah.
Measure the ping time.
Yeah. By the way, I'll issue the disclaimer. I am by no means an authoritative person on this subject. I've learned a lot of what's in this article in the last 3 months, but it's fun.
Yeah, I'm not an expert
Yeah,
either.
NTP can be a challenge to play with sometimes.
I'll tell you what, that's been the number one nemesis for me is NTP, because there's so many different parameters and
Yeah.
And I understand there is another protocol now that's coming out that may ultimately replace NTP.
I see that there's some references to something called Crony.
Crony's been around for a long time.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's one or two of the articles, the guy uses Crony rather than NTP.
Yeah, and I tried that. Crashed my system, had to rebuild. Well, that looks like a good idea. I'll try that. It didn't work. I also wanted to throw a little credit to Ron Morosco Jr. Y'all probably know Ron Morosco Sr., K5LLL. Jr. is his son, and he is a Cisco systems genius. Runs around the world fixing nasty problems with Cisco equipment. But he built one of these and got it working satisfactorily. And I went to him, and I think he threw a couple of these articles to me. He said, "Hey, look at this. This will tell you, what you need to do to fix your problem." And sure enough, it did.
Yep. Yep. No, this is great information. I had a Stratum 0 server that I took care of at my last job. So
You've been there, done
It
that.
had many Stratum 1s tied to it. So in January, when I go back to work, I'm going to be running a super lab. So I'll probably have another one set up.
That's cool.
Yeah, wow.
And you talked about that fudge factor, Doug. K5LLL uses, he tunnels over to Ron Jr. NN5DX's time server, and they've measured the latency in the tunnel over a period of weeks, and he put that fudge factor in. He's got his clock pretty darn accurate just by fudging the latency between here and Fort Stockton.
Yep. So anybody thinking about doing this, the other thing to look at is once you get your GPS hardware and stuff, if you haven't really messed that much with the Pis, you might download the KM4 ACK script. After you have your basic Raspberry Pi set up, it's loaded with amateur radio programs that you can set up. And one of them that he does have set up is all the GPSD stuff, so you can.
I hadn't even thought about looking in that. That's a 16 gig file.
No, it's not that. No, you're thinking of HamPi. This isn't HamPi.
Oh, okay. Let me,
So
hold on. a
this
second.
this is just a script. It's much better than Ham Pie. It's just a script. You load up your standard Raspberry Pi image, then you download and run this script, and it pops up a menu, and you tell it which amateur radio applications you would like to install, and it builds them from source.
Oh, nice.
So what's his call again, or?
Kilo Mike 4, Alpha Charlie King.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, so if you search on his call, if you Google his call with Pi script after it, you'll get to his GitHub page, and there's all kinds of information there on it.
Kilo Mike 4 Alpha
I
Mike.
prefer it much better than the Build-A-Pi. I've played with both of them, and the Build-A-Pi worked fine too. The problem with the Build-A-Pi stuff is the only way to update any of his stuff is to completely reload a new image. So if you make a bunch of custom modifications or add other programs, you lose all that stuff when you do an upgrade and have to recreate it all.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's not a good way to do things in my book. So
Mhm.
when I found the KM4 ACK stuff, I really migrated towards that. It works well, and I've ran my station and all my logging software and stuff off of his stuff for a while. It worked really well.
It's Kilo Mike 4 Alpha Charlie Kilo.
Yes, let me
Good.
verify that. I thought I had his page up here a second ago, and
If you
yeah,
haven't messed around,
KM4 ACK.
got it. And if you guys that haven't messed around with a Raspberry Pi because you go, gee, I don't know Linux. It's an interesting learning experience. This is a pretty
Raspberry Pis are a lot of fun, and you can make them as easy or hard as you want. If anybody ever wants any help with that stuff, please reach out to me. You know, I worked for the R&D Linux group at HPE for 25 years, so I'm pretty Linux savvy.
Wow.
And that's where I'm going back to work in January to manage one of the super labs. So yeah, if you guys have any Raspberry Pi or Linux questions, you feel free to reach out to me.
We should have talked to you earlier.
Saves us all a lot of head scratching.
And if somebody
Yeah, if I
wants
would have
to,
known you guys were messing with any of this stuff, I would have been glad to help.
Well, you're part of the team now.
yeah, you've just been recruited. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, no
You're the
problem. Yeah,
quarterback.
I was looking at some of the equipment and stuff that I'm already scheming on building stuff. So yeah, I'll be more than happy to help out where I can. So I'm in the process now of I just picked up a Yaesu 857D, so I'm starting to build my little portable parks on the air station or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to run it all off a Raspberry Pi. So I'll probably incorporate this into it because that has been a question when we've been out playing in the parks is how do we get good time, and this is the perfect way to do it, and it's very simple to do.
Yeah, one of the articles, there's a guy that out of Scandinavia somewhere. Did you see that article, Doug?
Is that the YouTube?
Yeah, I think he's a YouTube. Yeah, I don't know if he's an OH call sign, I think,
Yeah.
from Finland, but he likes to go out and sit in the snow in a tent and
Oh yeah, I
work
saw
radio.
that. I saw that.
So you got to wonder if the guy's got all of his screws in, but he built, a Raspberry Pi time server off the GPS because when he's out in his tent, he's got nothing.
That's
But
right.
he didn't go with the PPS interface. He just stayed with the taking the time off of an NMEA sentence and processing it through standard available stuff that Pi had. He was getting plenty accurate times. I think 38 milliseconds is good. Isn't 38 microseconds better?
Absolutely. Okay.
This is great information, guys. Glad you guys shared this out.
And if anybody wants to get a copy of my image, which is everything that's on the SIM card, that would almost be a plug and play way to get you a GPS server. And it's not that expensive a project. What's the latest Raspberry Pi selling for?
Well, they're hard to get right now.
Yeah, the problem is nobody has them in stock right now.
Yeah.
I'd like to see how much of this will, how well it'll work on a Pi Zero too.
Yeah, the new Pi Zero ought to be able to handle it.
Well, it's not really horsepower hungry, so it may work fine on the Orwin. I mean, NTP isn't a hog, so.
So here's my NTP file. And I've got all this stuff where I've been adding in and commented out, and up here at the top of servers and 127.127.28.0 and .22.0, and then back down here at the bottom I've added different ones. And
Okay, there's your stuff down at the very bottom. Okay, so you're pointing to yourself.
yeah,
Look at that fudge line. Have you got a correction in the fudge line? That it's
yeah, the time is 0.000. I haven't put the correction yet in that fudge line.
oh, you've got it commented out. Never mind.
Yeah,
Well, he's got a fudge line at the very bottom. It's uncommented. There's actually a couple at the bottom that are uncommented.
yeah. So I'm sure this thing is a mess, a nightmare, and an embarrassment, but yeah, that's the way it goes.
I don't think mine's got that many lines in it. I think I took out when stuff didn't do what I wanted it to do. I took it out.
Well, if you collapse it down to just the ones that are active, there's only 6 lines that are active, and
And there's only a handful of lines that you really need in there.
yeah, well, this is the kind of thing that we need to learn. So,
Hello, gentlemen. Sorry I'm late, but I am here now.
welcome.
Hey, Jerry.
Very,
Did I miss the presentation?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I understand you recorded it, though.
Oh, yes, yes. It says it's recording, so.
Good.
Doug or Kim, I sent you a link this evening with this guy that's building these boxes.
Yeah, I looked at it. It's a GPS disciplined oscillator. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think they're about $140.
Yeah, I saw that they weren't as near as expensive as ones used to be. Jimmy, have you ever dealt in any of those GPS disciplined oscillators?
Sorry, I was distracted. Have I ever what?
Have you ever messed around with a GPS disciplined oscillator?
No, I have not.
That initially was one of the things I was looking at because I wanted to, just for the heck of it, build a precise 10 megahertz oscillator for my K3S.
Right.
Not that I need it any more accurate than it is, but it just looked like fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, what we used to have at HP is in the Max Performance Lab. They were up on the 4th floor by a window, so they had a commercial GPS based time system in their lab, and I had that tied into other parts of the company, so that was basically the Stratum 0, and I was the Stratum 1 that everybody else would feed off of. So I was just feeding off of that one GPS time system.
Yeah. Yeah, Doug, I'm looking at your data here on the screen. Look at see the X's you've got on line 2 and 3 there?
Yeah,
It's not happy with those.
there's something wrong. That's part of all this confusion, I think, on the local server things.
And the ones with a plus are candidates for being added into the pool of information, but
Yeah,
not needed.
it's using the SHM2, which is it's awfully high. 184 microseconds. It's high.
Yeah.
But it's not 2 microseconds. I'm still not happy with it. I'm just still casting about with what I need, what I don't need down there in this bottom line. So servers and fudges.
You've got a lot of duplicated lines down there. That might be freaking NTPD out a little bit.
Yeah, I want to get Kim, if you'd send me your NTP file,
Yep.
then I'll see what the difference is, and maybe it's just some little parameter somewhere.
I have a question I'd like to ask.
Sir,
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot about this new TV stuff. This is over the air. This isn't going to affect people that are on satellite or cable, right?
Right.
Yeah, I noticed channel 39, was it?
Yeah,
Said you had to go and
for the next
relearn all your
couple-
channels?
For the next couple of years, it's not going to really affect anybody. Because for the next couple of years, they still have to broadcast in ATCS1.
Okay. So if we're on, and it wouldn't make any difference anyway if we're on cable because the receptor to the cable.
Yeah, the
Has to
cable,
be the one to change.
the cable company's taking care of, the cable and satellite companies take care of all that. That's different, but it's not, it's different what they're sending down to your TV.
this is the over-the-air stuff.
No,
Yeah,
What is the
it'll only
advantage?
affect over the air, but I think they have to transmit ATCS 1.0 through 2025, and then everything will flip over to ATCS 3.0. And the only way to get over the air then is to get a TV that supports it or get one of the little converter boxes that they'll come out with.
Okay. But that's for people that are receiving it over the air.
Over the air, yes.
Okay, now my question becomes this. We all had analog TVs at one time and then they converted to digital.
Yep.
Those boxes that did the converting to digital, would they work with this new?
No,
No, you have to get a new.
there'll be
Okay.
the current boxes that are out there convert everything to ATCS 1. So they're going to have to come out with a new box that understands ATCS 3.0.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you very much.
Or you spend $40 and get you a Fire Stick and go streaming. What I did.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of bothers me that sometimes the video and the audio are not synced. And that, you know, when you look at the guy's lips, it doesn't match up.
A lot of times that's because your TV's having issues with your HDMI cable.
That happens on all of my
A lot of times,
TVs.
if you unplug your HDMI cable and plug it back in, everything will sync back up.
Hmm.
Oh,
I'll try that
interesting.
tonight.
Hmm. That
Or
rarely happens.
sometimes you just leave it go and it catches up.
No, there's a number of different things that can cause it, but usually what I found if one gets out where it's really out of sync weird, unplugging the cable, HDMI cable, and plugging it back into the TV fixes it.
I'm going to try that tonight.
That's a good pick. Okay, thank you.
So basically, my Fire Stick plugs directly into the HDMI port. So
Right.
just pull the Fire Stick and stick it back in.
Yep. Let the TV rediscover it.
And I don't have all brand new TVs either. I may be
Yeah,
contributing.
I don't. I just got one of the new Fire Sticks because I wanted to watch some stuff on Apple TV, and my old Fire Stick wouldn't support that app. So I just got one of the new 4K Fire Sticks. But the only reason I really upgraded it was because I wanted to watch a couple of the documentaries on Apple TV.
Yep.
My TV's old enough that my TV's a dumb TV. It doesn't have the apps built into the TV.
Well, mine's just one generation newer than that, and it has a few apps, but not all the apps.
Right.
Doug, question for you. Did Tim check in? Did the new guy check in?
No.
Okay. I'll send him an email tonight or tomorrow
Thank you.
to my eyeballs and having to take care of the wife. She's got to the point where she can't walk hardly. She's walking on using a walker or rollator. She can't even move a walker. And I've got a herniated ulcer on my foot from diabetics. And so I'm not moving around very well either.
Oh, boy.
So things are not looking good at this house, but we'll survive.
Well, I hope that gets resolved soon.
What was that?
I said, I hope that gets resolved soon, Jerry.
It's been, well, it started out as a hammer toe on one foot, on one toe of the foot. And then they had to take a bone out from under the ball of the right foot. And ever since that's happened, that sewer is just not really closed up. It just keeps letting things leak out of it, for lack of a better word. And I've been watching, not eating sweets, gone back to drinking a lot of water, and staying off of the stuff that diabetics shouldn't be on. So maybe that'll help close it up. But anyway, like I said, guys, I appreciate all your help. Sorry I'm late. I will go out and take a look at the recorded presentation because I think it's important. And I'll get a hold of Tim tomorrow.
Okay,
Doug?
thank you.
And I want to say thanks to Doug because he kind of took the lead on this presentation. And I kind of left him hanging because it just never fails that whenever I plan something that the granddaughters get in the way. So.
Well, but it was interesting. He put the preamble together and the equipment list and sort of like that. And then he said, basically, something goes
Isn't
here.
it funny how family interferes with life, ham life?
Yeah, it sure is.
Hi, guys.
Good night, Jerry.
Good night, Jerry.
Hey, Jimmy, I did find out I do have that Apple app on my phone.
Okay.
And you say the name of that video is from the bottom to the top?
So the one where they did the all electric trip was it's called The Long Way Up.
I just noticed of all the pictures I'm seeing on my screen, we all seem to have receding hairlines. Is this contagious or something? Or,
It's fashionable. Yeah, Larry, you get the most here, I think.
I don't know. It's receding quite quickly lately.
Yep, I got a spot in the back here that
Yeah, mine keeps growing.
going
back.
away, and I will reach the point where I pull the razor out and just go chrome dome.
I did that several years ago, many years ago. Now I just buzz it with some clippers. For a long time I was shaving it smooth, but I had to do that every day. That got to be a hassle.
That's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.